watch vlogs or read blogs of people's experiences of what it's like to live in New York City, they often speak about the logistics of it all. How much the cost of living is, the weather, transportation, you know, things you can Google. This is beneath the scenes. So I'm gonna give you the real. This town forces you to figure out who the you are and what you value. And quickly. Welcome to Beneath the Scenes, where we peel back the layers of clothing and makeup that protects us and get personal. It's about me, it's about you, and what's trending too. If you have never seen this space before, pity where you been. I mean, get into it, okay? I'm Kayla Riggins, and your life is about to get a whole lot better. I don't know where you've been, but hello, hi. Come on in. Today, I am dishing on the truth about living in the concrete jungle where dreams are made of, New York City. Last week on September 10th, it marked 6 years since I packed up all that could fit in 3 bags and took my behind to New York City. Child, if you've been following me for some time now, then you would know what a 6 years it has been. But I realized I've never sat down and told the story of how I moved here with no job, no place to stay, and no money. Let's go beneath the scenes. One of the questions I get asked all the time is, why New York City? Of all the places in the world, why did you choose to move there? My answer is quite simple, and it's that I've always wanted to live here. I remember being a little girl dreaming about stepping out of a cab in New York City, tossing my hat in the air, and twirling around in the middle of the street like Mary Poppins, singing New York. Little did I know, the real experience is walking up the subway stairs, dodging rats and rodents and humans. But I'm here, so I guess things kind of worked out. As I got older and decided what I wanted as a career, New York was even more in line with my path, as this is Media Market 1 for all things entertainment, television, production, and media. So it became the place I simply needed to be. I was determined to get to New York City. I tweeted this back in 2011, which was 2 years before I moved here. Come on, manifestation. Oh, Jesus. So after graduating college in 2013, I decided to go for it. So I had about $2,000, which was basically what I had collected in graduation money. And I decided that I was going to book a one-way flight to New York City. I packed up everything that could fit in 3 bags. I told my mama I'm doing this. She looked at me like, okay. And I set my sights on New York City. I know what you're thinking. What was your plan? Where were you going to stay? So listen. I had did some research about renting rooms in New York City, but at the time there were several websites that marketed themselves as room renting agencies. So the pictures on the websites were like really nice, furnished rooms. You pay one price per week or per month, and everything was all inclusive. There were rooms as cheap as $600 a month. So the way I saw it was, I have $2,000 that'll get me at least 2.5 months worth of living, and I'm gonna get a job as soon as I get there, doing whatever I can just to be in New York City, and I'll figure the rest out. So when you get here, I landed, I went straight over to the agency, and they immediately ask you a few questions, what you're looking for, and they start sending you out to view properties, to rent a room. Now, I knew I would be walking into a roommate situation, but I thought that these rooms were rented in apartments with like-minded people, recent college graduates, people who were currently in college, you know, young working professionals. What I didn't know was these were rooms that were like in the basement of people's houses, families, people with kids, and they would rent out these spare rooms to make a little extra change. But that's not the way it was marketed to me on the internet.
Don't judge me.
So I'm viewing rooms, and one of them had like a whole family of 7 that lived in the house. There was this extra room. It had a twin bed, no window. There were no kitchen privileges. Like, it was literally strictly you rent the room and nothing else. So definitely not staying there. Next, So then I go to another property. It's like in a back alley somewhere. Like you have to go through 4 doors to get to it. And if you know anything about New York, you know they will stick an apartment in between a shoe and a bookshelf. Like there can be an apartment placed anywhere. So I went through about 4 doors to get to the apartment, and I will never forget when I opened the door, like the last door that led to the apartment, a nickel bag fell out, or a dime bag or whatever. I don't know much about drugs and how to sell them. I wish I did, but I don't. And all I know is a bag of weed fell out. And I was just like, the ghetto. Like, where am I? The ghetto.
Ah, the ghetto. The ghetto. The ghetto.
So then I was sitting on the couch with who would become my landlord, viewing the property. It was nice. I was into it. Finally, I was seeing things that was of the standard that I would potentially live in. As I'm sitting there speaking to the landlord, Mickey runs across the counter. I gotta go. I spent all day apartment shopping and I wasn't finding anything. Before I knew it, night had fell. The agency was getting ready to close and I had nowhere to go. I found myself in a Starbucks in Harlem, which is actually not too far from where I live now, with all 3 of my bags. It was about maybe 10 p.m. and I was on the phone with my mama crying down to the ground. I had failed. I thought about a friend and a soror who I had met the summer before down in Atlanta at Greek Picnic. So I went to Clark Atlanta University. I'm a Delta, you know, we come, we hang, whoop whoop, do our thing. So I said whoop whoop. I should have said ooh. So I remembered that I had briefly met her and she said that she lived in New York. And I was like, oh, I'll be there this summer. I have an internship, which I had. But at this time that was over and I had come back to New York to now try to live here permanently. And so I called her out of the blue. She happened to live 2 blocks away. Crazy. She came, got me. I stayed at her house for the night. I woke up the next morning. I went back to the room renting agency. So now it's day 2 of pounding the pavement. I upped the budget again to $800 a month. And I'm seeing better properties again, but nothing that was suitable that I would actually live in. Like I needed more of a not a family style setting. I needed somewhere where I had kitchen privileges. Like, come on, duh. And I just needed more of like a roommate style situation and not you are renting a room in our home style situation. So night 2 comes, still hadn't found anything, but I can't go back to my soror's house. I gotta go. I remembered my friend Greg. We went to college together, and I remember that Greg lived in Jersey. I called Greg crying. I was like, I don't have anywhere to go. I'm just out here by myself. Can you help me? He was like, well, I'm all the way in Jersey, but if you can get to Jersey, I can come get you from the train station. So me and all of my bags, again, all 3 of them, all 3 of them.
All 3 of y'all.
Got on the train to Jersey. Greg was living with his grandmother at the time and she wasn't really having it. She told me, she said, listen here, I don't really do this staying with people stuff, but I don't believe in no women on the street. So I'm gonna let you stay here for the night. And so she was kind of over Greg even living there with her. So here comes Greg with company. She just wasn't having it. But I am so gracious for Granny because she let me stay. I hit the pavement again, not really having much luck, but I'm finding my way. Like things are getting better. Finally, by the 3rd day, in 2 nights, sleeping with Granny, even though she only gave me 1 night, I snuck back in for a 2nd night. She didn't say anything, thank God. And by the 3rd day, I found an apartment in Washington Heights of New York City, which is right outside of Harlem. And it was a 4-bedroom apartment. I was renting a room for $800 a month. And that is how I finally had a place to lay my head. So y'all, my mama, hard body. She don't really cry. Like I can count the number of times on one hand I've seen her cry in my entire life. When I called her that night to tell her I had found a place, she burst into tears. And it was at that moment that I realized how dramatic and how bold of a decision I had made. And I aspire to be more like that Kayla who packed it up and came to figure out how to make it happen. I like her. I admire her. So in terms of the job, remember I told you I had interned here the summer before, the summer of 2013, before I decided to pack up and move back. I actually went back up to that internship because I kept in touch with the HR manager just to say, hey girl, hey, how you doing today? And she was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, you know,
just back.
because I didn't really have a real answer. And she was like, oh, well, I can't promise you anything permanent, but we need some PAs around here. We're ramping up some of our programming and we could use your help around here. And so I was a production assistant at the company that I had interned for the summer before. And that job was supposed to be for like 2 to 3 weeks just helping out. And it led to a 1.5 years of me working there, which ultimately launched my career in television production in New York City. When I think of that journey, and when I think of how bold I was and how I had the audacity to move here with no real plan, I often think like because I had the faith, God granted me a way simply by believing that it could happen. And wow, like I'm glad that I'm telling this story because there are things within this story that I need to hear about myself right now today, 6 years later. So now flash forward 6 years later, I have the pleasure and oftentimes the pain of living in what many people consider the greatest city on earth, New York City. I've evolved as a person, both personally and professionally, and I have learned so much, but I like to say that I moved to New York and met me. This town forces you to figure out who the f you are and what you value, and quickly. When I watch vlogs or read blogs of people's experiences of what it's like to live in New York City, they often speak about the logistics of it all. How much the cost of living is, the weather, transportation, you know, things you can Google. And while those things are crucial to your survival in New York City, this is beneath the scenes. So I'm gonna give you the real. Friendships are important in this town. New York City is cold, both literally and figuratively, and trying to weed through the industry booze and find real, meaningful, genuine friendships can be challenging. When you move to New York City, your social calendar will explode. There are going to be brunches, lunches, launches, happy hour this, meet and greet that. It's going to be always tons of things to do. But honestly, in the midst of all of that, there have been and still are a lot of times when I feel alone. It's so easy to get caught up in the clout of living in the big rich town. And it's those meaningful friendships that will keep you grounded in moments like those. Meaningful relationships are sometimes foregone because people are more focused on who you are, what you have access to, and how you can help elevate them. While I love a good kiki over a cocktail or networking with like-minded people, my circle of confidants has remained intimate. That is the type of friendship that feeds my soul. It is the people who are truly there for me, who are in my corner, regardless of what I can offer them. There are people who I met within week 1 and week 2 of moving to New York City that I am still friends with to this day, 6 years later. And those are the friendships I value the most. Living in the Big Apple, you have got to believe your own damn hype. This city will cause you to question and discover everything about who you are simultaneously. So you gotta have thick skin and believe your own hype. In the social media digital age where everyone is constantly talking about themselves and promoting themselves, it's easy to fall into the cycle of feeling like you aren't doing enough while also feeling like you're doing too much. And I have admitted before, and I will continue to admit, that I find myself comparing my life to the highlight reels of others. But being surrounded by so many like-minded people in New York City has definitely helped me refocus and stay grounded during those times. You have to drown out the noise and focus on the positive, and that is something that I have definitely learned over these past 6 years. We remember criticism 5 times more than we remember compliments. But in this town, you have to have a certain swag of confidence to survive. Translation, believe your own damn hype. One of my biggest takeaways has also been learning the value in talking to everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. There have been so many random conversations I've had on a subway platform, on the train, or in the back of an Uber pool that have led to friendships, business opportunities, or just a cute kiki, a nice shoulder to lean on. That's one of the most beautiful things about New York City. You never know what the day will bring and who you will encounter. You could easily be sitting on the subway next to the CEO of Microsoft, and through a random conversation about liking his tie, you now have that connection. Connecting with people has been one of my greatest gifts since living in this city, and it has definitely been one of the things that has benefited me personally and also helped me help other people. Another thing that living in this city has taught me is to DIY. Do it yourself. I'm not talking about arts and crafts projects or an organic face mask. Instead, I'm talking about everything else. Although there are many resources at your fingertips, listen, New York City is expensive. She is a cute coin. She costs a pretty penny to live in. So whenever you can save a few coins, do it. As a way to fuel my hustle, I've learned how to be very self-sufficient. This includes everything from doing my taxes, shooting, editing my own blog and video content, even maintaining my own red hair. I dye it myself. You name it, I have figured out how to do it myself. If you can Google it, there's a YouTube video about it, and you can do it yourself. Listen, this place chews you up and spits you out. It forces you to find yourself and figure out who you are. And while it is extremely hard to live here, I can't think of any other place I'd rather be living in my 20s. And for that, I am extremely grateful. To quote the great philosopher Sean Carter, ever since I made it here, I can make it anywhere. Boom. Alright, as always, I like to end on a positive note. Sometimes things can get a little bit deep, so I like to redirect the energy and switch it on back to positivity. Today I'm going to share with you two of my favorite quotes from Sex and the City. I just so love that show, and of course when it was on originally I was too young to watch it, but watching it now as an adult is super fun, especially considering I live in New York City and Carrie Bradshaw is always dropping jewels about what it's like to live in this town. So two of my favorite quotes from Sex and the City. The first is, in New York, you're always looking for a job, an apartment, or a boyfriend. And that is truer than true. I like to say most times you're looking for 2 out of the 3. One of my other favorite quotes is just a little nugget I like to keep with me during those tough times. And it says, maybe it won't look like it did in high school, but anything is possible. This is New York. Lady Liberty Torch. And then lastly, I'm going to leave you with this quote from Andy Warhol, which says, living in New York City gives people real incentives to want things that nobody else wants. I just thought that was a very deep way to put it. Definitely adds perspective to the conversation, and it's super true. Living in New York City, it forces you to look at life through a different lens. And so that's definitely one of my favorite quotes that I read on those tough days as well. And that concludes this edition of Beneath the Seams. Listen, per usual, I like to keep the conversation going down in the comments. If you live in New York City, I want to hear your feedback. What has your experience been like? Can you relate to mine? Did I hit the nail on the head with what we go through every day? I want to hear from you. Give me your feedback. I also want to hear from some native New Yorkers. How does your experience as a native compare to my experience? You know, someone who has implanted themselves here. So I want to know. And if you are thinking about moving to New York City, I hope that this was helpful. I want to hear from you too. If you don't live here no more, I want to know why. Let's just keep the conversation going down in the comments. And of course, I cannot let you leave without doing what? Double tapping that ass. And by ass, I mean mine in this video. Give it some likes, some loves, some hearts, some comments, all of that. It's free. It's free. It costs you absolutely nothing to double tap. So just show your girl some love. I mean, come on. Come on. I got a couple seconds. Double tap. You did it? Alright, cool. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of Beneath the Seams. And listen, I'll be back next week. I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.